Hello and welcome everybody. This is Adam from Miller's Custom Guitars and the N+1 podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in, however you are, whether that's on an app through Stitcher or Spotify or Apple Music, or if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Today, I am joined by an extremely special guest. Out of all the guests, and I don't want to make less of any of my previous guests who I've really enjoyed talking to all of them. But out of all of them, this one is definitely the most important because this is the only one that truly loves me. They might say that they love me, but they don't love me. They don't love me like this one loves me. This is my darling, beloved, dear sweet wife. Please welcome Desiree Miller. This is my beautiful wife, my beautiful bride of 17 plus years, Desiree Miller. And today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, one that is very dear and important to us. And we talk about on this podcast hobbies, passions, obsessions, and what comes next on our journey. And for us, one of our passions and obsessions is the journey that we have embarked on of homeschooling, right? A couple years ago, and this kind of started for us with when everything went on lockdown, right? When we really started to get into homeschooling, we liked the freedom of homeschooling, but we found that even that freedom was too limiting for us. And Desiree came to me and started to suggest an even more open and more free style of homeschooling that is called unschooling. And that is actually what our podcast is about today. So today we're talking about a style of teaching that is called unschooling. And I brought on my wife, who is a credentialed teacher, went to school for teaching. So, we're not just some fly-by-night, people digging in a ditch somewhere that are trying to teach our kids how to dig ditches. Although that is, that's fine. If that is what you are interested in. But we take our children's education very seriously, but we have found that educating them in this way of unschooling has been revolutionary with our children's education, wouldn't you say? Definitely. So let's start talking about it. First of all, tell us a little bit about your background in education, and maybe how we started homeschooling before we started talking about unschooling. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about maybe how that works out.
Okay. So I went to college to be a teacher, like an elementary teacher, and I got my multiple subject credential, and then I taught third grade for my first year and learned a lot. learned what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we had kids and I didn't work as much and so on. Our daughter went to school, but we started to notice some interesting things with her learning and her reading particularly. I don't know if we want to get into that. I guess that's important because we started homeschooling our oldest when she was in fourth grade.
Right, fourth grade.
Because she was really struggling with reading, and even going through like special ed and everything wasn't helping.
Right.
And among other reasons, we
what do they call it here in California? They call it a
specific learning disability.
No. Like when you're in school, they have a learning plan or
IEP.
They call it an IEP. I don't know if they call it that everywhere, but here in California, they're like, oh, you're behind on this, and we'll make an individualized education plan,
right.
An IEP, and she was on that, and it wasn't really helping. And the thing that was frustrating, we were in a school that we loved. It was really great. And they were putting her on the IEP, and they're like, yeah, it's helping, but not enough. But then the really frustrating thing is that they kept saying it's helping, but not enough. But she's still reading at grade level, right? Remember they kept saying that? And that to me was the frustrating thing because we knew it wasn't true. And I don't know about you, but I felt like they were saying that because they didn't have the resources to really help her the way that she needed help.
Yeah, basically. There's a lot of that, like, yes, she's behind in this, but she's still okay. You know, kind of not really sweeping things under the rug, but trying to sort of butter it up so that it looks like they're doing as much as they can.
Right. And this is something, if you have a child with a learning difference, as they call it, they're very hesitant to say the D word, and parents like us, we work hard to normalize, dyslexia, which our daughter has, and make it not a bad word, just to make it, hey, it's just a thing that it happens, and our daughter has dyslexia, which is part of why this was such a problem. But one of the reasons that we found that in schools they don't like to use the D word is because if someone has dyslexia, then there's a bunch of different things that come with that they have to provide, and so they don't like to say dyslexia, because then they have to do all these other things. So so the school we were in was great, and it was a good school, and they were trying hard.
It was a good community with very, very patient teachers, because a lot of the kids that came there, they tried other schools. It was a charter school, and here they felt like their kids can be themselves, which very much was. That was definitely the case. Yeah. But it's still a state school system, so like what she really needs is one-on-one attention, which obviously she can't get that at school. So we pulled her out to homeschool her, and we did that for, was it 2 years?
We did that. We were going to try it for a year, and we felt like it was helping. And then we were going to try it for a second year. And basically at the end of the second year, we're like, we have to do this full time. But by then, we started to think that maybe this would be something we wanted to do with our other children.
Yeah. Yeah.
By then, Ezra, our youngest son, was having a really difficult time with school socially, and our middle son had started to become really introverted, and he's, they're both really smart kids, and we just discovered that our kids learn different ways, and the classroom system wasn't right for them. Right. Yeah. That's the biggest thing. Yeah. And my wife's background as an educator, personally, I believe in school. I think, Desiree, you would say that school is
school works for some people.
School works for some people. And we found that school wasn't going to work for us. Right. So then we started to homeschool.
Are you going to where we brought the boys in?
Yeah. Okay. So the pandemic happened, right? And we kind of took that as the dry run for homeschooling. And it was pretty good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, can I back up a little?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because really, I'd been, I don't remember how I found it. I think a friend had brought up the word unschooling, Joanna. And so I had looked it up and started researching unschooling, like while I was homeschooling Elena. And when I mean homeschooling, I mean like we were doing school at home. Okay, so yes, I try to make it fun. Yes, it wasn't 6 hours. It was fewer hours.
Now, this was during the pandemic, right?
No, this was before the pandemic, when we just had Elena home. Okay. And then...
so this is when we were going through the chartered homeschooling, right? So they have the assignments, they have the curriculums. We still kind of found that kind of restrictive in some senses. Right.
So the reason I got interested in unschooling was because when you're homeschooling, you're the teacher, right? And your kid's the student. And so then you've got this pushback of they don't want to do this thing that you thought you made it fun so that they wouldn't push back. And then you're fighting about school and it's stressful. And they still don't want to do it unless you give them candy or whatever. And there's just this whole thing of like, this is not how I want learning to be. You know, I wanted learning. I love learning. I want my kids to love learning. I want them to be excited about learning, not resistant and not only willing to do it if they get things,
Right.
you know.
Yeah,
So that
you know,
kind of made me start my research with learning differently through unschooling. And then the pandemic hit.
Right. So, you know, I'm sure every parent can relate to, you know, if you start parenting through bribery, you know, that's a slippery slope. And you can only do that so far before you run out of treats to bribe them with. And then you're broke and you have no more candy left. So you got to find something else. You know, hey, you know, when you're a parent, you need a lot of bullets in the chamber. You need a lot of tricks in the bag
Right.
to parent. Sometimes it's bribery. It's, you know, sometimes it's, you know, punishment. Sometimes it's, you know, collaboration.
Right.
So, you know, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater there, but we started to look into unschooling. So let's talk about it. And I just wanted to actually also set the stage, and I'm going to admit, hey, unschooling, and especially, you know, homeschooling by itself and especially unschooling is kind of comes from a place of privilege. You know, not everybody can homeschool. You know, we are in a place, you know, we kind of live below our means on purpose so that we can homeschool. You know, we live comfortably, but we also live very frugally. You know, Desiree doesn't work because she wants to homeschool. You know, and not everybody can make that decision, and that is something that we definitely admit. And Desiree, in her current job, she works part-time, and she sees kids that she looks at and goes, man, this kid could really benefit from homeschool, and it's just not in the cards for them because, you know, it's not in the cards for everybody.
Right, for whatever reason.
Yeah, for whatever reason. So we'll just admit, you know, hey, you know, homeschooling is definitely comes from a place of privilege, and we definitely acknowledge that. But I wanted to say, so if someone's sitting there, they've been listening to this podcast for however many minutes, 10 minutes or whatever, and they say, what the heck are you guys talking about? What is unschooling? I've never heard that term. What even is it?
Okay. So unschooling, it's kind of there's other words you can use for it to make it sound less anti-school, but
To sound less like a hippie?
Yeah, you can call it interest-based learning is probably the best one. Okay,
That's a term that we actually teach our kids to use.
Yeah. Basically, it's taking the idea of learning like you do at school with subjects divided, sitting down with a pre-planned curriculum, and you throw that out. Okay, and instead you make learning just a part of your life. You know, right. You let kids ask questions. Mm-hmm. You help them find answers to their questions. What are they interested in? They're mm-hmm. interested in learning how to code, or they're interested in drawing mm-hmm. or whatever. So you get them tools you need. You find them tutorials. You teach them what you know. Maybe you don't know anything, so you guys learn together.
Right.
You know, and it's basically taking the idea that you go to school to learn, and then you're done, and right. saying no, learning is something you do every day,
all the time,
every minute of the day, yep. your whole life.
Right. The way that I explain it, this happens at every single family event. So my wife is homeschooling our kids, and she's using unschooling, and this came from her. It didn't come from me. And the second she walks away, someone will ask me, how is things going with your kids? And then they just attack me. Family members attack me. How is it going? Aren't you worried about X, Y? And we're going to get into some of those questions, I'm sure.
They always ask you about the schooling right. and schooling,
right.
even though I'm doing it.
And like the second my wife walks away, you know, all of the questions, you know, so wait, you don't have a curriculum, you don't practice math, you don't practice reading. Aren't you worried that they're going to, you know, fall behind? Aren't you worried about this and that and that? This is how I explain it to, and first of all, as a parent, of course I am worried about those things, just like any parent would be worried about all those things for any kid. Even the ones that are in regular school, you want your kids to be able to do math and to read and to spell and to know things about history and to know things about the world. Of course, I'm worried about those things. I'll just put that on the table. The way that I explain it like this is that children are naturally inquisitive. They naturally love to learn, right? And for some kids, a lot of kids, not every kid, for some kids, the school environment, that sitting in rows, sitting in a desk, the certain times you're supposed to learn and whatever, it squashes their love of learning. And so a lot of times you talk to a kid and they say, I hate school. And they say, I hate learning. I don't like learning. I hate school.
Or I hate math.
I hate math. And they don't hate math. They hate the system of school. And so unschooling is removing those restrictions and saying, you know what? Life is a lesson. We're always learning. And so I always kind of joke, I don't know what grade my kids are in. Because, when school never starts and school never stops, we don't have Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, weekends, because when school never starts and school never stops, there's always a chance to teach. There's always a chance to learn. School's always in session. And then the thing about unschooling is that it's student-based, interest-based learning with parental support. So we're not just letting our kids do whatever they want, right, all the time. We are letting them pursue what they're interested in, and we are supporting their interests. When our son says he wants to be a game developer, it might look like he's playing video games for 12 hours a day, but he's playing the games that are very code and mod heavy, and he's learning how to mod his own video games and write code, and he's 9, and we're supporting that, and we're helping to provide the support and the tools to do those things.
That's an important point. We're not just ignoring our kids and figuring that they're going to learn, which they will anyway, but what will they learn? They'll learn that their parents are interested in them. Right. The support is very important. That's why I like to say that unschooling is it's really a lifestyle, because we have to be involved. We have to know our kids. We have to know what they're interested in. We have to listen to them. And even if something that they're interested in seems weird to us, we still need to be open and listen and see how we can support them or why they're interested in this interesting thing. It's very much about relationship, which I'm a very relational person, so it's perfect for me because I love just spending time with the kids and getting to know them. And that's one of the things I love about this is I feel like I really know my kids, and I like that they're willing to come to me for questions.
So let's move on with the questions. We kind of powered through in that whole thing. We kind of talked about the introduction, and we kind of talked about how you got started into it. So that's kind of 2 questions. And we kind of touched on it a little bit, but what are some misconceptions that people have about unschooling that you think?
Probably what we just sort of mentioned is that we just ignore our kids or whatever, that we're not involved. That might be a misconception. I think a misconception might be that they're not going to learn to read and do math because we're not sitting down with books and reading lessons and math lessons. Right.
I was one of the biggest people she had to convince at the beginning of this whole thing. She came to me, I want to teach our children this way. And I was not having it. I was like, well, what about reading? What about math? What about these things?
Well, you were open and supportive as usual, but you did have concerns.
Right. And here's what I found. Because like I said, kids want to learn. What I found is that our sons, they're reading just fine. And our daughter who has dyslexia she's finding ways around her learning difference. As far as math goes, Zeke doesn't really have a lot of interest in math, but Ezra is very interested in math, and he's always trying to understand some of these bigger math principles, and I think when the time comes, he's going to get them. And so I think to kind of answer this question that I asked, one of the misconceptions, well, what about reading? What about math? What about these things? And the philosophy of unschooling is when something becomes a barrier to their learning, they will learn it. Right? You've told me that. And we've kind of found it to be true. Right? So like something, as Zeke with his video games, he's learning to code and program video games and, to do mods and stuff. And if there's something he doesn't know how to do, sometimes he gets frustrated and moves on. And sometimes he learns it and overcomes it. And sometimes he circles back and tries again on the things he got frustrated on, which is what he's doing right now. That's
one thing that's great about this lifestyle is, yes, like if they need to learn it, they're gonna learn it. Okay, like our daughter might say she doesn't like math or whatever, but she's earning money now, so she's doing math because she wants to know how much will she need to buy this, or how much money is she going to get on payday, etc. So she's doing the math because it applies, because she needs to. And then another thing you just brought up was one thing. It's not just about learning stuff, math, reading, history. It's also about learning the learning process. So yes, I tried this thing and it was frustrating. I'm going to stop. Okay. And learning that that's okay to put it aside, take a break from it,
Right.
Forget about it for a few days or a few weeks or whatever. Definitely. And then knowing that you could always come back and try again or try something else or come back with someone who can help you.
Right.
That's part of the learning process, and they're also learning how to learn.
Right. Which is, if you went to college, I felt like, when I got to college, high school was teaching us how to follow instructions. And college taught me how to learn on my own. I don't know if that's what you felt. When I got to college, they were like, they didn't care if you showed up to class. You would go to class and like, oh, they don't take attendance. Heck, they don't care if you do the assignments. Because it's my dime. Right, I'm at college. I'm paying to go to college. They don't care if I learn. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm not here for them. I'm here for me. I'm trying to better myself. And that's when I started taking college more seriously. And that's when I learned how to learn was in college. And we're just putting fast forward on that. And we're teaching our kids how to learn for themselves at a younger age. We're kind of skipping that, and kind of to the detriment is they're not great at sitting, and following instructions. That's something that's a skill but maybe they'll be entrepreneurs and they'll be their own boss. I don't know. But
I hadn't thought about that, like applying the word like investment. Okay. Cause you're paying for college. So you're invested, right? That's one thing that's important to learning is that if you're interested, you're invested. Mm-hmm. So you're going to put in the effort. Right. You're going to figure out how to learn it.
Yeah.
Something interesting.
So we've been now homeschooling for 2 years?
With all of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So we've been homeschooling for 2 years. We've been doing Elena for 4 years. Mm-hmm. In that time, what have been some of your biggest challenges with homeschooling and specifically with unschooling?
Okay, biggest challenges. I'd say it's funny because my biggest challenges don't have to do with the kids.
Okay. That's fair.
My biggest challenges have to do with my fears.
Sure.
Are
mom guilt
they going to be ready to grow out in the world because I haven't, we haven't sat down to learn this thing, or this topic hasn't really come up, or they're not really strong yet in reading or what have you. Also fears of like, what will people think, mm-hmm. Then when they find out what we're doing, which is not sitting down for 3 or 4 hours with books. Mm-hmm. Also another challenge I think is just explaining it. Like people like, so if you don't use curriculum, what do you what do you do? And I'm like,
Right.
well, we go to the library, we look things up on the internet.
Yeah, the to me, one of my biggest challenges is when someone asks our kids about learning, about school, right? And we've had to train them. It took a while, because the way that we do school, sometimes it doesn't seem like we're doing much. Sometimes it's, like I said, sometimes it looks like, Zeke is playing video games.
It looks like playing.
It does. It looks like playing. And think about this, like a little kid, especially like little babies, they literally learn by playing, right? They learn how the world works. They learn about physics by going up a slide and going down. They're literally learning how the world works through playing. And we're just extending that, right? And so for a long time, we'd go to church or something and, what about school? Oh, we're homeschooled. I don't go to school. What? Oh yeah, I don't do anything. I just swing all day. I play video games. Guys, join the narrative, man. Like,
let me explain.
And so getting the kids. So now the kids are a little bit better in saying, they'll actually say interest-based learning,
or they'll say, we learn through life.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll tell people.
Learn through life, yeah. And so that's been a challenge for me. But we still get, for me, one of the big challenges, we still, like I said, I still get cornered at family parties, I was at a family thing a month ago, and my grandma was like, well, what about Elena? Aren't you worried about, this? And grandma, so first of all, yes, I am worried.
We're parents, we worry.
Of course. But at the same time, I'm not, because I see the other things that Elena is growing so strong at. And when you take off the constraints of the learning, you have to learn these things at these times, sometimes little kids' brains, they don't develop all at the same time. So maybe the math part of their brain is more developed than the reading part of their brain. And so if you just let them go where their interest leads them, they're going to have more fun. They're going to be more invested, like you said. Mm-hmm. They're going to have a better time, and everyone's going to be less frustrated. And that's a big thing, right? It's because we were dealing with so much frustration about school.
Yeah, and anxiety.
And most that's basically gone away.
Yeah. So, and when they're learning kind of naturally and as a lifestyle, they're learning at their own pace, and whatever whatever their brain,
yeah, delicious. They're ready.
Whatever their brain is ready for, and it doesn't have to be you learn this by this grade and you learn this by this grade. It's like you might learn a little bit here, and then adjust that for a while, and then you're ready for more. So you learn it here and there, and there's not the pressure of I need to learn this by this. By May, or what have you.
Yeah. So we've been, like I said, we've been unschooling for a while. Why do you do it? What about doing, you have itinerary?
I like this question.
What about teaching this way fills your bucket?
Okay, so what fills my bucket is mostly the relationships I have with my kids now, which is
wow. Yeah, totally.
Just, we have like these inside jokes with each other because we're with each other and because they show me these videos or we talk about these movies that we watch or whatever. And, I know what they like. I know what they don't like.
You know so much stuff about Minecraft. It is ridiculous.
I know. Yeah. Sometimes it's challenging to listen and focus, but yeah.
It's okay. You also know a lot of stuff about guitars and podcasting.
I do. I'm learning about that too. I love that relationship that we get to have by doing life this way. That's probably my biggest bucket filler. And also seeing you involved, like when Ezra comes and he has a question, you're like, okay, let's talk about this, you know.
I know for me.
And then you guys get all nerdy and excited about stuff.
So a couple things for me, what fills my bucket. I know she's the guest, but we are partners together, right? So what fills my bucket is just, I always look for those teachable moments. And when you're homeschooling, every moment can be a teachable moment. I just know that for some reason for us, it's always, something always comes up when we're driving around in a car. What is this? Why is that? What's going on here? And it just, and I always, sometimes I'll start talking and then I'll just preface them. Hey guys, we're homeschoolers, so this is your homeschooling lecture time. So, oh gosh. But I use those opportunities to tell, the other day I was telling them about the Constitution, and voting and, amendments to the Constitution, so that was a very interesting time. Something happened today where, they were in church and they, for some reason, one of the things was to do a bracket of some sort. And my daughter had made hers about characters from her favorite book series. Now, this was a book series that she was like, I'm really enjoying this book series, and she does audiobooks. And Dad, I want you to read these. And I said, hey, I'll tell you what, at the time there was 14 of these book series. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. If you read Harry Potter, I'll read Wings of Fire. For every book you read, I'll read 2. We made a deal. That was my parenting deal I made with her. And we did. And I said, because I love these books and they're great and you'll love them. And we'll nerd out together. And every Harry Potter book you'll read, we'll nerd out and talk about Harry Potter. And every 2 Wings of Fire books I read, we'll nerd out together. And since then, they've released a bunch more Wings of Fire book. And we have talked about those and gotten excited about them. But then she brought out this bracket today, and all of a sudden we were nerding out all over again, making this big, it was like a college basketball tournament bracket of who the best characters, and it was just fun, just being, fandom nerds with my daughter of a book series, of my daughter who's very dyslexic, and, without audiobooks, she wouldn't have been able to read those things, so, but just, hey, we're fans of a series. And we were arguing about who would win in a fight, like you do with other fans of a book series.
You guys spent a lot of time on it too.
It was probably like an hour because we were at church and then we left church and we came home and we kept going. It was awesome. It was so much fun. That kind of thing fills my bucket, when I bought Breath of the Wild, Legends of Zelda Breath of the Wild for the Switch, and it sat up in our closet for a while, and then it sat there and no one played it, and then Zeke started playing it, and then I started playing it, and now I'm asking advice for Zeke. Zeke, help me with this, and Zeke, help me with that, and so sometimes I help him, and sometimes he helps me, and that kind of stuff, and the way Zeke likes to do things is he doesn't like to play any game the normal way,
Yeah.
Like I was giving him a hard time. I was like, Zeke, have you ever thought of just buying a game and playing it? And he doesn't. He wants to buy a game and mod it.
And do the cheats.
And do the cheats. So on Breath of the Wild, he was doing all these cheats. How do you get the Master Sword early? And how do you do an inventory mod or inventory glitch? And that's like his whole thing is he wants to push the boundaries of the games that he's playing, which I love, So I had him show me how to do the Master Sword glitch, so it's fun. So those are the things that really fill my bucket.
Yeah. And another thing that fills my bucket, I think, is just seeing the kids, the excitement in their face when they're learning about something that they're really interested in. Like, Mom, I just found out that blah, 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 blah,
Mm-hmm.
Or Mom, the Lego Friends is getting new characters,
Yeah.
And it's just like, just having them come to me with their excitement is just like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm just so glad you're happy.
My favorite part is I love it when Ezra, he's our youngest one, and he's 9, and he'll run up to me, I get home from work, and he'll start talking to me about some YouTube video he saw. But the thing is, I will have seen the same YouTube video, and I know he doesn't understand it all the way. Something about a black hole. Kids always love black holes or whatever. Yeah, did you know blah, blah, blah about a black hole? And I go, hold on, bud. that's not quite true. Let's talk about it,
Yeah.
And we get into, well, this is actually the truth about black holes and blah, 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 with my meager understanding of quantum physics.
With that business degree you
Yeah,
have.
with my business degree that I don't even use. So this is the tough question, and we have a lot of these, but do you have any bad experiences that you're willing to share? Maybe times where everything went wrong or that were, tears were shed, or I don't know, anything, stories that come to mind?
Since we've been on, I don't know. I'm sure you could think of something because.
Well, for me, the bad experience was the classroom experience.
Right, the bad experience is kind of what led us to do something different.
For us, we were at, like I said, we were at a school that was great. It was a charter school, and they lost their charter, and they got our sons. We were already homeschooling our daughter, and our sons got put into the local public school, which is not that far from here. Nothing wrong with that school at all. It is a good school, good teachers. They're trying very hard. And it just did not work for us at all. It was a very bad experience. It was a nightmare every single day, to get the kids out of the door to go to school. And every day when the kids got home, there was not one good story. It was just like, no positives,
Yeah, it was very stressful.
Extremely stressful. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you tell, you're going to tell the kids, hey, guys, we've decided to homeschool. And you think, oh, I'm going to miss my friends. No, it was like, yay! It was happiness. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember telling them at dinner and they were pretty happy.
Yeah. And you're like, hey guys, we've been homeschooling because of COVID. We're going to make it permanent. All right. Yeah, we don't have to go to school, Yeah. So this is, I've kind of relabeled one of my questions, but do you have what you might consider to be like your like signature move for unschooling, or maybe like some might call it like a veteran move? Like something that you haven't seen other people do, and you think your way is better?
I hadn't thought about this question yet.
Yeah, it's called unschooling. Guys, try it. Just let your students follow their interests.
It's like a signature move.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything special I do. Like, I don't know if this would be a signature move, but basically just asking my kids, like when my kids are sitting down doing something or watching a video, like sitting down, what's that? What you doing? Or why do you like that video? Or what's so funny? Kind of just starting a conversation. And that's not really special that I do, but that gets the ball. It gets the ball rolling.
It is special because you're doing what a lot of parents don't do, which is engaging with your kids, which is hard to do nowadays when we have our phones staring at us in the face.
Right.
You're engaging with your kids. You're showing that you're interested in what they're doing. Yeah,
I try to be very deliberate with that, which of course, like anybody, if I'm tired, then I'm not going to be very good at that. But I try to be very deliberate. Like Zeke is at the computer a lot, and he's also very introverted. So a lot of times he's not going to come to me, throughout the day to talk about this and that. But I've learned to pay attention and know that he likes me in the room so that he can turn to me and say, hey, Mom, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Or what have you.
It's weird because he doesn't want to go out. He doesn't want to do anything. But he likes just hollering things. It's funny. I'm kind of the same way too, but he's like, yeah, he'll have the headphones on. He'll be doing his thing. And then he just likes to holler things at whoever's in the room.
Yeah. Well, but he's even told me specifically, like it was actually pretty early on when the computer was still in here. He's just like, I like when you sit with me, Mom. I like when you're just there, like even if we're not engaging and talking.
Can I tell you a secret? We all like having you in the room.
Even the dog.
Yeah, even Luna. We all want, there's not enough of you to go around. That is for true.
Sometimes I feel that.
Yeah. Well, I'm having a lot of fun with this discussion. What about this? Doing unschooling. Do you have any guilty pleasures? Something that, like if someone caught you doing, they might look down at you or give you a hard time for, but you don't care, you do it anyway?
Yeah, sometimes the whole thing is a guilty pleasure because I'm not struggling through pushing my kids through curriculum.
Sure. Yeah, I kind of agree.
And that's definitely a pleasure. Sometimes just doing my own thing, like stopping whatever I'm doing to do art or go to work or run to the store, where I am technically ignoring my kids because I'm doing something else. Sometimes that's a guilty pleasure because I know that it's okay, that they're still learning, that I'm going to come back to them and check in on what they're doing or what they've been doing, So.
Yeah. It's not pajamas all day, or no, you get dressed.
I don't feel guilty about that. Pajamas are great.
All right. We're going to be right after the break. This episode of the N+1 podcast has been brought to you by Desiree Miller Tutoring. I don't have proper paid sponsors yet, but as I have said multiple times, this podcast would not be possible without the patience and loving support of my beautiful, darling wife. And as you have seen, she is very passionate about education, and she is a tutor who is available to teach your children. And, despite our passion for unschooling, if you hire her for a tutor, she isn't just going to sign up and then just let your kid do whatever she wants.
Right.
She's a very good tutor. Do you want to say anything about tutoring?
Well, I've been doing it for several years. I've tutored elementary math and I've tutored reading. I'm currently tutoring a homeschool boy in science and history, and we go through his book and we talk about it, I do nowadays bring my philosophy of learning should be fun into tutoring. So it's especially easy with math. I try to make the math fun. We do games if we can, that sort of thing.
So if you have a young learner that needs some tutoring, you can find Desiree on Facebook. Just do a search for Desiree Miller Tutoring. I tried it and it comes right up. She comes right up and you can reach out to her that way. She is available if you're in Tuolumne County. She's available for in-person tutoring, or she's also available for online Zoom tutoring. Also, another way that you can support the show, and I say it almost every week, is to help to grow the show. Just give this episode a like. You can, if you think this is interesting, we haven't talked about education before. If you have a friend that has a young learner that might be considering the homeschool route, maybe send this episode to them and see that this might be helpful to them. Or whatever. Yeah, just give this episode a like or a share. Any way that you can help support this episode, that always helps us out. And especially if you are on YouTube and you're watching this right now, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, just click that little subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything and it helps me out. When I'm filming this right now, I've only got 22 subs. Come on, people. What are we doing? All right, we're going to get back to the main episode. Thanks, guys. All right, guys. Let's keep going here. What is in your journey with unschooling with our children, what has been your favorite or best moment, like your shining moment where you just thought it was like a huge breakthrough or victory?
It's hard to pick one thing. But one thing that comes to mind is, our daughter has been very resistant to reading because it's hard for her. So just having her, there's been times where she's come to me and she's reading the dialogue in these videos that she's making. And I'm just like, wow, I didn't know she knew that word, It's just like, that's awesome. And, oh, you know what? The other day, she was playing Sims, and she's like, Mom, I memorized this. There was some command that she needs to do to do something on Sims, and she memorized the word. It wasn't a word I have specifically taught her. So I was just like, that's awesome. Like, she's finding ways to learn these words that she, needs to know for different things. And it's exciting that she's even able to talk about it. Because, like, in the past, she might not even want to talk about learning new words because then she might feel pressure to learn more. And we might think, oh, you're learning this? Well, why don't you learn this and this? And then there's, like, the pushback. So her kind of being open to it, not only just learning the words, but also being open to, like, kind of celebrate, hey, Mom, I know this word now. It's like, cool. It's really exciting. It's really awesome.
Yeah. If someone is listening to this right now, and maybe they've started homeschooling. Yes, you. Maybe they've started homeschooling. Maybe like us, around when the pandemic went into place, they started homeschooling, and they kept doing it. And they're listening to us talking, and they're saying, you know what? That sounds pretty good. What advice would you give for someone that is looking into unschooling? Are there resources that you would recommend that they read or listen to? How would you recommend that someone start getting into unschooling?
Well, I'll start with resources. I would say Sue Patterson online. You could just look up the name Sue Patterson. She has a great website where she talks about unschooling. She also talks about specific things. How do kids learn reading in unschooling? How do they learn math? She has little booklets you could buy, you could print them or whatever. She even has a podcast on Spotify that's free. So I'd say recommend doing some research, which I did research for like over a year before I even brought it up to you, because at first I'm like, what is this strange thing, So I recommend doing some research and finding out through your research online how does it work. Another great resource is it's another podcast. It's called Living Joyfully, and she also has a website. I think it's called livingjoyfully.com, and that's all about unschooling. And she'll have some episodes where she talks to grown unschoolers, kids who were unschooled and now they're adults. And so you kind of get the perspective of like, okay, how do these kids turn out,
Sure, that's a good question.
Yeah, so those are great resources. I'd say do some researching. And if you are homeschooling and you're thinking of jumping into unschooling, I'd say start small. Start with a little bit of freedom. Not like say yes to everything, there's no rules now, because that will backfire on you. But just like, hey, Mom, can I watch this YouTube channel? Or hey, Mom, can we get this video game that I'm interested in? Or can we go to this place that has nothing to do with our homeschool topic? Like, say yes. And then look for what they're learning through that, which might not always be something you can put in a box of subjects. It might be they're learning to ask questions. They're learning to talk to adults outside the home. They're learning how to navigate the internet safely, different things. And also, one more thing, if you're going to start jumping into unschooling, start to address, and you'll learn this if you do your research, start to address your fears of like, oh, I'm afraid they're not going to learn this, so I have to push it. It's like, what are you afraid of? And maybe what's the good thing that might happen instead? Kind of look for that.
Yeah, so there's a big part of that. Getting over your fears. There's two parts to that. Number one is listening to the testimony of others. Mm-hmm. Because you hear time and time again, it actually ends up most of the time being okay. And then just time, because after a month, no, they're not going to know calculus. Right? There's people that go to calculus for years that don't know calculus, right? Mm-hmm. But you got to give it time and, listen to the people. And, if you can, try to find a support team if there's none in your town, find an online support team, a Facebook group or whatever, and, find other people that are going through it that can get support. And then I'll tell you, one of my advice is like, if you're sitting there, even if you're not a homeschooler, if you're just a parent that's got kids and you want to start to incorporate elements of unschooling into your life, the thing you can do is just have your ears open for questions. And, like when Courtney was here and was on the podcast and we talked about improv, right? It's like a yes and, right? And it's just like, hey, your kid asks a question and you just go, yeah, let's talk about that. Let's do it. You just jump into the things that they're interested in. You do it, like I said, with support. You follow their interests with support. And it's hard sometimes because it takes time out of your own things that you have. And then the other thing is bringing them on along with you. If they show any interest, in what you're doing, say, yeah, hey, come take a look at this. I'm working on this guitar. Sometimes Ezra or sometimes Elena will come over and want to see how I solder a guitar pot or change a tuner. Desiree does art and they'll want to see how she paints the things or cuts the things. I don't do art. I don't know how things do. So, rope them into your interests, and jump into their interests and be open to, like that philosophy of school is 24/7. Start to embrace that philosophy in your heart that, when you're at the grocery store, it can be, hey, class is in session right now. Well, hey, bananas, do you know where bananas come? Do you know that they grow this way? They don't grow that way, Do you know that they're tropical? Do you know that they grow in bunches? Do you know that, all these things?
But it's also learning sometimes to hold back so the kids aren't, especially at the beginning, they're not like, oh,
I don't hold back. No, I don't hold back. No.
But can I just say something?
Sure.
I'm really proud of you. Like,
whatever. Beat it.
You learned so much about unschooling that I, I did all this research and whatnot, and you haven't gone online to do the research, but you've learned it by living it, which is what really unschooling is. You learn it by living it.
Whatever. Just beat it. Stop flirting with me. I'm not taking. All right, guys. So now we're going to get into it. We're going to demonstrate unschooling by bringing in a special guest. But in order to do that, I have to change the microphone. So we're not going to do that right now. We're going to cut to that right now. Help me out with this now. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so we're going to get into it right now. Desiree's going to take you into a closer look at some coding that our son has been doing to make his own video game. So take us in, honey.
Okay. So this is Zeke, and he's been wanting to make a 2D platformer game for a long time.
Yeah.
And guess what he did?
I have the animations are ready. I just need to code them in. It feels pretty good. It's I can definitely make the jump.
Now you basically drew all this,
yes,
right?
I drew all
including
this.
the character.
So all this pixel art down here.
Yeah.
You drew all of those blocks. You drew
Yes.
this bone. I watched you draw that bone earlier.
So this guy's name
your
here.
character.
His name is Ninja Dude.
Ninja Dude.
That's his birth name.
Nice.
So you drew this whole thing.
Yeah.
Now can you back out to the code again and show us the code?
Yeah.
So you were saying that you made some mistakes in the coding.
Yeah.
right?
I literally made this here an
Oh,
N
no.
on accident. That was and just because of that, I'll show you. I'll show you exactly what happened. I changed it to an N, and
So Zeke, who taught you how to code this?
the internet.
Yeah?
The
Yes.
World Wide Web.
Did I teach you how to do this?
No,
Did mom teach you how to do this?
definitely not.
No. You taught yourself from the internet how to code your own video game. 2D platformer.
And I'll tell you this: the best thing about making a video game is messing around.
You can make the gravity times 10.
He fell so fast he rode through the world.
Nice.
So yeah, point 3 is definitely the best. Or you can go. Actually, let's do a bit stronger than that.
He's off the screen. Okay.
Playing.
All right. That was a great demonstration. Thank you, Zeke.
You're welcome.
People can find you online on YouTube at.
Stream it all.
All right. Find
No
out stream it all.
traces.
All right. And now we are joined by my son, Ezra, who's 9 years old. And he has been learning magic tricks, especially tricks with cards. So show us what you got, Ezra.
This is a shuffled deck. Could you shuffle it for me?
Yes, this is a card deck. We're going to shuffle the deck. I'm going to shuffle it right here on my knee.
Knee shuffle.
This is a knee shuffle.
Apparently. I made that up, by the way.
I'm going to do one more knee shuffle. That's how you know it's good. You get 3 knee shuffles. Okay, 3 knee shuffles.
So now, I'm going to riffle down the deck and tell me to stop at any time.
Okay, go ahead and do it again. Hold on. Stop right there.
Okay, so now this is your card.
Okay.
Put it maybe just there and don't look at it.
Okay, we're going to not look at it. Do I show the camera? Or are we just going to keep it a surprise?
Remember, keep it for a surprise.
Okay, we're
for
keeping the
everyone.
card a surprise. No one knows what it does. I don't know what it does. I haven't seen it.
I don't know what it is.
He hasn't seen it. You guys haven't seen it.
So how long do you think it would take me to look through every card in the deck and find that missing card that is right there?
To look through the whole deck and find the whole card that is in my hand?
You mean find out what it is?
To figure out which card?
Yeah.
Like 5 minutes.
What if I change the minutes to seconds?
5 seconds? There's no way. It's impossible.
I'm going to have to spread out the deck.
Here, there's a table right there if you need to spread it out. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, could you take the 4 of clubs from under... could you flip over the 4 of clubs?
Oh my goodness.
That was tough. That was actually tough.
That was a magic trick. Great job. Hold on, don't go away. This is Magician Ezra. Take a bow.
No.
Okay. So, Ezra, I have a question for you. This is Unschooling. Who taught you how to do that magic trick?
YouTube.
YouTube?
I have no memory of who it's made by.
YouTube University.
Yep. That's what
No.
Jed was saying
No.
when we talked about photography. He said YouTube University. Ezra, did I teach you how to do that magic trick?
No.
Did Mom teach you how to do that magic trick?
Maybe.
Did we tell you, hey, we want you to be interested in magic?
No.
No. Why are you interested in magic?
Because it's interesting.
Right. Okay, that's Unschooling. Thank you so much, Ezra, for joining us.
This is a quick little magic trick. So this is the King of Spades. And this one I made out myself.
Okay.
And then I take it here. I'm going to think of a card maybe like Queen of Hearts. And then I'm just going to change it. And,
What?
Are you actually surprised?
What? What?
I'm pretty sure I made that trick up
Did you-
with you.
Did you guys see?
No,
Did
that
you
was-
guys?
He just changed the king to a queen before our eyes.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
If
I
you are
feel
9,
like you guys are acting
No.
even though you aren't.
no, that blew my mind.
You know I don't remember half the things you
Okay,
do.
guys. If you want to learn magic, Ezra is giving lessons online.
Soon. Not right now, but soon.
Okay, Unschooling, guys. It's real. Man, that was a great demonstration from our son with that. We don't know what happened because we haven't filmed it yet.
Moving magic.
Movie magic. Okay, Desiree, my beautiful
That's me.
bride. That's you. This has been fun.
Yeah.
This has been a great
We
discussion.
should talk more.
What is for you and for a family, especially when it comes to schooling? What is N+1? What is next?
Okay. So it's actually something I've been thinking about, and I don't know how soon it is, right? But I've been thinking and praying about having sort of mentors involved in our kids' learning.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
Like other adults that we know and trust.
Sure.
You know, like to help our kids learn beyond what we can teach them
Sure.
and beyond what they can learn at home.
Right.
You know, like for Zeke, obviously someone who knows something about video game development and coding, you know.
Right.
For Ezra, I found that great young man who was willing to come and teach him some magic tricks, you know, and that I don't know that Ezra won't do that again anytime soon, but it was nice kind of a test run to that kind of thing,
Yeah,
you know, and
I
then
think
for
that'd be amazing.
Elena, it could be, you know, something to do with digital drawing or interior design, but don't tell her I'm thinking about that. I think she'd be great at that.
Whisper into your microphone.
Interior design. You know, just some way they can get involved with someone in the community, with our community. Thankfully, we have a great community. We've lived here for 14 years, you know, where we can tap into people's knowledge and find people who are passionate about this, that, and the other thing and say, hey, are willing to meet with my kid or answer their questions, you know.
Yeah. That is the end of our questions. I'm going to shift around a couple things, something I've been thinking about doing, so we're going to see how that works. If people wanted to find you, are you interested in getting followers? Maybe for your art, right? Or
I have lots of things I dabble in.
well, hey, look, hire a tutor, guys.
Yeah.
Hire a tutor.
So you can find my for tutoring on Desiree Miller Tutoring on Facebook.
And you're on Instagram, DD Minis, right?
Yeah, I have 2 Instagrams. Well, yeah, my public one is DD Minis, which is
DIDI or
no, it's the letter D and the letter D and then Minis.
Okay.
And that where I put my art.
She has some really beautiful art, and we'll probably have her on again to talk about art someday because she's a really talented painter and artist.
Yeah.
So
And then I have my Etsy shop, which you've advertised,
Yeah.
which is the same name, DD Minis.
no one bought anything. I'm mad at you guys.
It would help maybe if I put more stuff on there. Yeah, and I don't know if somebody was super interested in talking to me personally about unschooling, they could always
You can post in the Facebook group.
post in the Facebook group, and I could always DM them and
Yeah.
answer questions.
Yeah.
You know,
For
so
sure.
I love talking about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go to the Facebook group, and you can post questions there. And
the N+1 podcast.
N+1 podcast, Obsessed with Obsession, Facebook group. It's a long name. Well, thank you.
Wordy as usual.
Thank you so much for your time. Now, here's the 2 silly questions before we get out of here.
Okay.
You have a good one, it sounds like.
No, I'm just excited about the silly question.
Okay, I want you to say a sentence and casually drop the name of the most famous person you've ever met.
Okay. But when I was in 8th grade, we had the opportunity kind of through my school, I don't know how it worked exactly, to go to New York. And so my mom came with me and we went to New York and did tours and different things. And we went to see the Phantom of the Opera. And then, and that was like on Broadway. We saw
nice.
a couple of not so on Broadway.
That's
but
awesome.
that one was really fun.
Dude, that's so
and
awesome.
then we walked out and there was a crowd of kids around somebody and I'm like, who's that? And oh, Chuck Norris was signing autographs on playbills. And so I squeezed my way in being a little person and I put my playbill on top of everyone else's and he signed it. And then he gave it back to me, and I said, thank you. And he smiled at me. And we didn't actually meet, but he did look at me when I said thank you.
I think that counts. I was standing right next to you when you met Sarah DeRose.
Sarah DeRose would definitely be...
She's not as famous as Chuck Norris, though.
Not as famous, but she's definitely getting more famous, which is really cool.
That's
because
awesome.
she's my favorite.
We're going to go see her in January.
I forgot about that.
Didn't you buy the tickets already?
Yes. Yes,
I'm so
so excited.
High five. Go see good music if you can. Okay. Name drop card.
Oh, do I get to drop it?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Someone has to drop the cards around here. Okay, last question. What is your favorite all-time cartoon theme song?
It's really hard between the two.
You get one. You can't be Gabe and get two.
I know.
Gabe cheated and tried to get two.
I think it has to be DuckTales.
Woo!
Because
Life feels
it's
like a hurricane
here in Duckville.
It's a duck blur. Might solve a mystery or rewrite history. DuckTales. Woo! Yeah,
It's just so catchy.
Good.
It's so catchy.
Good.
And of course I memorized it because I watched this show like
We all did.
twice a day.
I think
every day.
people our age.
Yeah.
That was like the ringer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been a great discussion. I hope everybody learned something. You know, I love you.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. And if this is my beautiful wife, thank you for joining us. And if you, my son is being a nerd and being a creeper in the window. Until next time, guys, say it with me. 1, 2, 3. Don't be a jerk. That was awful. All right, guys.
I'm like, what are we saying?